All right, starting Monday, August has really shown the market's true colors. Is money moving into the KOSDAQ? Today, August 11th, we're seeing some confirmation. But first, let's check the index situation. With a bit of time left before the close, let's look at the KOSPI first. This afternoon, around 1 p.m., there was a brief dip, but it's gaining strength again towards the end, hovering around the 6,300 mark. It's recovering and showing a 0.7% increase. Today is truly a day for the KOSDAQ, with the index rising over 7%. It's quickly bouncing back above the 855 mark, showing a 56-point rebound. Foreign buying is mixed in both markets. The KOSPI has a net selling of 1.5 trillion won, while the KOSDAQ shows a net buying of 250 billion won. Individual investors are also mixed. In the KOSPI, there's a net buying of 870 billion won, while in the KOSDAQ, there's a net selling of over 800 billion won. Institutions are buying in both markets. Today, the dollar-won exchange rate is around 1,417 won, and overall, we're seeing a significant number of rising stocks. In both markets, over 200 stocks are falling, with about 680 rising and 208 falling in the KOSPI. In the KOSDAQ, over 1,430 stocks are up, while 240 are down. Overall, it looks like most stocks are rising, with around 440 stocks combined from both markets showing declines. We'll take a closer look at the closing situation shortly, but for now, let's discuss the market with our guests. We have Kim Jang-rayo from Unestri Asset Management and Lee Kwon-hee from Whistlehip. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi
Both
there.
the KOSPI and KOSDAQ are doing well, but the KOSDAQ's performance is particularly impressive. Let's hear your thoughts, Director.
Yes, it seems that the expectation of a difficult interest rate hike in the US due to employment data is positively impacting the stock market overall. If interest rates slow down, it opens up the possibility for sector diversification. Yes, sector diversification means that areas that have been neglected or weak in demand, like small cap stocks and those in the KOSDAQ, are likely to benefit. With Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix not performing strongly, we might see a shift in sectors within the KOSPI, like transformers. Everyone seems to think this will happen, leading to increased demand in those areas. However, extreme leverage in ETFs has been neutralized, which has reduced market volatility. Instead of a concentration in one area, we're seeing a more spread out movement. The key takeaway is the expectation that interest rates may not rise.
You mentioned that the retreat from expectations of interest rate hikes has impacted the overall market. We'll delve into that further later. What's your take, Representative?
Right. It's fortunate to see the KOSDAQ showing strong momentum. The increase in the number of rising stocks in both markets indicates that investor sentiment is not weak. Today, both foreign and institutional investors are actively buying in the KOSDAQ, with foreign buyers and individuals buying together while institutions are selling, creating a back-and-forth dynamic. This shows a positive trend. However, KOSPI investors holding Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix might wonder why only these stocks are struggling. They're following a pattern similar to last Friday, where foreign investors increased their selling over 3 consecutive trading days. Now, they're buying back to realize profits, but the buying and selling prices need to stay below 890 to be profitable. If prices rise too much, they tend to sell off. They're not adjusting this with futures, but rather through ongoing selling in the spot market. When someone tries to buy and push prices up, they sell in the spot market. So, while futures fluctuate, they're still buying. The intermittent selling indicates they're reacting to spot market movements. It seems like foreign investors are quietly making profits while keeping the index stable and focusing on diversifying stocks. Meanwhile, the KOSDAQ is still attracting buyers. Exactly. Yes, it looks like they're engaged in a game of yield in that area.
This morning, the KOSDAQ triggered a buy-side circuit breaker early on. So far this month, there have been 3 buy-side circuit breakers, and the KOSDAQ's low at the end of July was around 630 to 640. Today, it jumped to about 850, showing an increase of over 200 points just in August. As you mentioned, some investors are concerned about the weakness in Samsung. There are definitely people wondering why it's underperforming and when it will recover. There's also some anxiety from recent comments about hitting a peak from Citigroup.
Are you referring to the overall Korean market when you mentioned Citigroup? I didn't catch that call. What are you talking about?
I didn't see that either.
A peak, right? What peak are you referring to?
The semiconductor sector. They say it's at a peak this quarter.
Morgan Stanley has a more positive outlook on semiconductors, so Citigroup is talking about the overall market, not just Korea.
They mentioned that memory prices might peak this quarter.
This quarter has already passed.
Right, so they mean next quarter.
The second quarter of 2027. Oh, the second quarter of 2027, yes.
If that's all they looked at, I'm not sure. If semiconductor prices drop significantly,
Sure.
It's been suggested that they could gradually decline from this quarter into the next, which has been discussed since February of this year.
Yes.
It's not something new. What I care about is how much it drops. A drop of 2%, 5% or 10% can be absorbed by costs or volume, so that's been the consensus. But the concern is that once prices drop, they tend to drop around 5% in a quarter. After that, prices have never gone back up in the following quarter.
Yes.
And in many cases, following past patterns of cyclical stocks, I don't believe prices will crash drastically in the short term, as I mentioned before.
Right.
The market worries that if prices drop by 5% or 10%, they could drop by 20% or 30% afterward. So when Citi talks about a peak out, it means prices will start to decline gradually. If they start to drop significantly, like 30% to 50% in semiconductor prices over the next year, that would be quite significant. If peak out means we should sell now because prices have peaked this quarter, that's something everyone already knew back in February, March, May and June. There was no call for semiconductor prices to keep rising 10%, 20% or 30% each quarter next year and still expect profits in the hundreds of trillions. It doesn't so discussing this at this point makes it feel more impactful, which I understand psychologically, but there needs to be something more. I think we might be able to understand that meaning a bit better.
We've talked about Micron, but since this memory is expected to peak this quarter, it seems to have impacted the US market and possibly ours too. So I wanted to ask about that. There's been a lot of talk about memory and the Korean market, but right now the market is focused on many things in electronics, including memory prices and shareholder returns. There seems to be quite a bit of optimism about the shareholder return discussions we talked about on Friday.
That optimism mostly comes from foreign sources.
That's right. It came from foreign sources. It's also
coming from China, Taiwan, and the US, how it talks about over 200 trillion in shareholder returns. But since that's just speculation, I think we shouldn't take it too seriously. I feel like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix are in a bit of a pause right now. There are still controversies surrounding semiconductors, but if you look at the overall mood, I believe the supply situation hasn't been resolved yet. You can see that all the candles are bearish, except for the 31st. Since August started, there have been many sell-offs, including for Samsung Electronics, so the indices are likely following that trend too. Excluding the 31st, there was only one bullish day on August 5th.
Yes.
Right now, everyone seems to be cautious, almost like they're conserving energy, which is a positive way to look at it. Yes. The index chart looks better than Samsung and Hynix because mid-cap stocks are holding up well and starting to rise from the bottom. It seems like we need a bit more time, but there are still positive discussions. However, there's no active buying from foreigners, institutions, or individuals. In fact, foreigners seem to be selling physical stocks to profit. That trend seems to be continuing. Today's market is similar to Friday's, with foreign trading patterns in futures and physical stocks looking the same. However, the KOSDAQ has been more active today compared to Friday. We saw that trend last week, especially with KOSDAQ stocks performing well. For example, Altogen is the top stock in the KOSDAQ market and has nearly reached 400,001. If you consider the previous prices, that reflects the non-dilution. Even if some accounts are currently in the red, there might be cases where they're actually in the green. You should calculate that. Yes. If you divide your current purchase price by 1.13, your average purchase price will be adjusted. Buying price. And since you get 3 additional shares for every 10, if you calculate that together, you'll see how much you're profiting based on the unit price. When you do that, you'll understand that the average buying price will be adjusted when the new shares are issued on the 26th, lowering your average cost. The good news is that the company's performance has been strong and they've made technology exports. Plus, BlackRock has made a significant investment, becoming a major shareholder, which could be seen as positive news. If you look at the price increase today, there was a huge resistance level, a significant range, and a lot of short selling happening, which seems to be getting absorbed now. This is what we call short covering.
All right, let's wrap up what the two of you said and check the closing situation. Today, the KOSPI ended up 0.65%, closing at 6,299 after gaining 40 points. The KOSDAQ rose 6.97%, finishing at 854. The KOSDAQ's buying sidecar was activated today. This month alone, there have been 3 instances of strong buying in the KOSDAQ, continuing the trend from August. As I mentioned earlier, foreign investors sold 1.5 trillion won in the KOSPI, but bought around 200 to 230 billion won in the KOSDAQ, while individuals bought in the KOSPI and sold in the KOSDAQ, showing a mixed flow between individuals and foreigners. Institutions were net buyers in both markets. As we saw earlier, the number of rising stocks is significant. In the KOSPI, nearly 700 stocks rose while 180 fell. In the KOSDAQ, 1,430 stocks rose and 230 fell, indicating a general upward trend in the market. market. Looking at the major stocks, electronics ended lower, down 0.43% and 0.14%, but some preferred shares saw gains. Electric vehicle stocks started strong but ended in the red. LG Energy Solution and Hyundai each rebounded by about 2-3%. Hanwha Aerospace performed well in defense and space, rising over 5%, and shipbuilding stocks like HD Hyundai Heavy Industries also rose about 5%. Samsung SDI saw nearly a 5% increase, and Korea Zinc stood out with an 11% rise. Today, semiconductor-related stocks, including Hanmi Semiconductor, showed very positive trends. Looking at the KOSDAQ, it's mostly in the red. Let's quickly check the top market cap stocks. Silicon 2 is in the red, but then we see a lot of red overall. The KOSDAQ really saw a lot of buying today, with stocks like Cosmeca Korea and InBody showing strong performance, except for a few that fell. I'm only pointing out the stocks in the red because almost everything else is in the green. Among them, Alteogen rose 14%, leading the KOSDAQ as a top performer. Let's hear more from the two of you. Director? Yes. Well, I need to ask the director about semiconductors. Some people in the chat are saying, wow, the market was great today, while those invested in electronics might find it a bit dull.
That's right.
Yes, the rotation of buying is a good sign, but for the Kospi index to rise, electronics also need to perform well. How long do you think this situation will continue?
It's just getting started.
Just getting started?
And I think the representative mentioned this last time as well. The diversification means that even if you gather all the sectors, it still comes down to Samsung and Hynix, right? Exactly. So it's more about individual plays than just the index going up. If you look today, the small cap stocks are doing well, but that's more like the KOSDAQ concept. Industries like shipbuilding and defense and transformers have all gone up, which is more like the KOSPI, right? And the reason for that increase is the diversification happening with Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. I've mentioned this before, including to my subscribers, that while it's a complex topic, AI exposure is one aspect.
Yes.
There are sectors outside of AI exposure and cash as well. It's important to have a balanced approach, as it's tough for any single sector to rise by 20 or 30%. Of course, if you're betting, you might want to focus more on certain sectors, but making those decisions isn't easy for most people. That's the reality. For the overall index to rise meaningfully, we need a change in our supply and demand dynamics, which will take time. I'm not sure how long it will take.
However, there are triggers. What are they? Interest rate cuts. Interest rate
freezes. Yeah? Saying it's a cut might be too strong. It's more about a retreat from rate hikes. Today we also got employment data, but since there are seasonal factors, we need to look at it again. However, considering the significant drops in July and August, it could indicate a trend. We also need to monitor the CPI, and if those meanings strengthen, the diversification could become more pronounced. That could come out first. The second point is that we had a rumor on Friday.
Yes.
The rumor I mentioned. I
right.
thought a lot over the weekend about how much of the rumor I should share.
But it seems like most of you already know about it.
Oh, but talking about it during trading is really delicate. When we discussed it on another show, we were much more careful than here. After trading, it's already happened. So even if we can't confirm if it's a fact, I felt it was okay to mention it. But some people seem to take offense. It's really tough during trading. Yes. After trading, I think we can talk about it a bit more freely, like on YouTube. Yes. That thing about selling at a low price or downgrading specs, you know? Today there was no mention of selling at a low price, but an article came out saying the specs were significantly downgraded. So I mentioned it that the specs for the Vera Rubin, the Rubin Ultra, which is coming out next year, were originally based on a 1 terabyte concept. Yes. It was supposed to be something like 200 gigabytes or 98 gigabytes, not a major upgrade. But now there's an article saying it's not a major one. With all this talk, there's just a lot of noise around it.
Yes.
So what happens then? Who's going to solve that? NVIDIA. When NVIDIA announces its earnings. But NVIDIA's earnings are on August 26th, so analysts are analyzing NVIDIA itself, and there's news about Vera Rubin. On the other hand, Vera Rubin just got some great news. The new product is a set of 5, and the memory capacity is equivalent to 4,500 regular smartphones. The memory accounts for 60% of the cost of materials. Do you know what the top product is? It's not HBM, it's SOCAM. So today, SOCAM and companies like Simtech are also rising, which reflects that sentiment. It's all mixed up. But to be clear, I think the fundamentals haven't really changed. Nothing has changed, but due to supply issues, Samsung and Hynix have done everything they need to do. They just need to buy back shares, and what we need is for NVIDIA to come out and tell us. It's not that it won't rise until then. It could start gaining momentum about a week before the major turning point, which is August 26th. So that would be the week after next. There was a foreign report that came out about a week ago saying that the share of memory semiconductors in AI data centers could rise to 73% by 2028. Yes, those discussions have come up. That aligns with what the center director mentioned earlier. The cost of what they produce is increasingly dominated by memory, but the fact that SOCAM is higher means LPDDR is doing really well.
So to conclude, it's really hard to make predictions about the market. But until NVIDIA's earnings announcement on August 26 or 27, we need to wait for confirmation. Or maybe even before that. Spreading. Sorry, go ahead. It's okay. It seems major. Yes.
Besides that, there's the share buyback and the news from China today. That's right. I could explain a bit if you want.
Sure.
Well, that's the minimum. Just doing that won't raise the stock price by 10%.
To briefly explain, Hynix plans to push for shareholder returns, and this is coming from China.
Should we take a quick look at
Let's
this?
take a look. Can you read the title in Chinese? I can't read Chinese.
I have a Chinese teacher. These days, everything gets translated, so there's no need to read it.
Right.
$700 billion, that's in US dollars, meaning 100 trillion. They're pushing for a shareholder return plan, which includes buying back shares, and that's about 40% or 40 trillion. Our market cap is around 140 trillion. So if they buy back that much, and we assume they burn the shares, that would increase EPS by about 3 to 4%. So theoretically, if this is confirmed, the stock price should go up by 3 to 4%. And the remaining 60% likely includes some kind of dividend or something else. Right, so that means the dividend yield is increasing. Yes, but if we look at why the stock price ended up like this, many people were waiting last Friday because they were set on moving their investments elsewhere. The same goes for Samsung. But this article about Baekyo, it's not new. It was published in the Korea Economic Daily on June 16th. The company hasn't confirmed it.
Yes, it's not confirmed by the company, but it appeared in the Korea
Baekyo's
Economic
shareholder
Daily.
return plan for 40 trillion is the same.
It's something that was already discussed.
Whether they will push this forward or not, I couldn't confirm the exact wording, but it was mentioned. However, it didn't actually happen. And what did happen? An ADR corresponding to 40 trillion was issued. At that time, the market cap was 1,700 trillion. So if you calculate, 40 trillion was a certain percentage, but that ADR issuance did not occur. So if we do that this time, it just means we're keeping it. Yes. I want to clarify that it's not something new. The company didn't make a mistake. They just didn't confirm this. But the market had already set expectations before the ADR was issued, thinking there would be a 40 trillion won buyback, even though it didn't happen. At that time, there was talk about buying back shares as new stocks were being issued, right? That's how it should be done. But I mentioned that 40% is 3.6%, and 3.8% is the closing price on Friday. The reason this amount is important is that recently, Kioxia announced a shareholder return policy with an 800 billion yen buyback, which is 3.6% of their market cap. So it needs to match that. Yes. If they don't, it could be a big problem. And do they have enough money for this? Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Let's see. Everyone, we talked about this earlier. They mentioned that they want to do something similar to Samsung, indicating how much of their free cash flow they plan to return to shareholders. In November 2024, we said we would return 50% of the cumulative free cash flow to shareholders over the next 3 years, which means through 2027. So how much will the free cash flow be this year? Now, let's calculate. This year's operating profit is expected to be around 260 trillion won. Let's lower that to 250 trillion won, since we don't know how Q4 will turn out. Operating profit of 250 trillion means we need to add back depreciation. So that brings us to 340 trillion won.
Yes.
This is the cash flow from operations. After subtracting capex and adding depreciation, we have 340 trillion. After taxes, the pure operating cash flow is expected to be around 300 trillion, slightly below that. This applies to anyone. There's hardly any difference. Regarding capex, if we don't invest much more, we can subtract about 50 trillion, which is key for free cash flow. How much will it be this year? It'll be over 230 trillion. As I mentioned, in November 2024, we said we'd return 50% of free cash flow to shareholders. If Samsung does the same as originally stated, we should expect to return over 110 trillion this year.
100 trillion is sufficient. 100 trillion is not just sufficient, it must be done.
Yes, and that's why we're issuing ADRs in June to generate market expectations. It was in the newspaper. And we mentioned doing something by September, right? Last Friday, it was confirmed again in journalism from China. It's important for this to come out quickly. When the 200 trillion comes out, the conversation changes. So if the 200 trillion comes out, then the free cash flow won't be 50%, right? More than that. That's not right. It would provide more than that. So either it exceeds 50%, or even if it's not consistent, the 50% free cash flow is accurate, plus there could be special dividends. If that happens, it would be a surprise. Then that wouldn't be 2 to 3%, but I'm seeing it as a 10% cut. That's how I see it.
The timing was mentioned to be by the third quarter, so by September, but some think it could come out a bit earlier, maybe late August.
Late August keeps coming up. It'll come out
I keep
soon.
hearing about late August, but that's not set in stone.
They want it done by late August.
Oh, they want
it done.
It's
Yes,
pressure.
that's definitely
So by late
pressure.
August, like you mentioned earlier, the 26th or 27th for NVIDIA's earnings, there's no confirmation yet, but there's talk about SK Hynix's shareholder returns. I'm curious if we should keep an eye on the KOSDAQ until then.
Right. Right now, it's all about Samsung Electronics, so it's not that exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, there probably won't be anything. Yes, there aren't any special issues. We're just going back and forth on what's already been said.
That's true.
Yes, and with the shareholder return plans coming out, people's sentiment might shift, but various conditions need to align first. It'll take some time to turn things around.
So we're checking the schedule for various events at the end of August today. The KOSDAQ did really well, and for those who invested more evenly rather than just focusing on electronics, it feels like a breath of fresh air lately. I think there are quite a few sectors to discuss, so could you highlight some, CEO?
Sure. Today, several sectors saw gains, including Hyundai Heavy Industries and the shipbuilding sector overall. HD Hyundai Heavy Industries received new orders related to data centers, which helped it rebound by over 5%, with a significant order worth 596 billion won. In biotech, Alteogen led the way along with ABL Bio, Peptyron and D&D Pharmatech all performing well. I believe we're seeing some technical rebounds and the effects of short selling being unwound. There was a lot of short selling, and semiconductor equipment stocks are also rebounding due to excessive short-term declines. Everyone knows the investment cycle is stocks aren't performing, but the results can be quite volatile depending on when they get quarter's results. From now on, those looking at semiconductor equipment should see it as a long-term cycle starting now. Fortunately, prices have dropped significantly, easing some valuation concerns, though it's still hard to say they're cheap. We're looking at 2028 and 2029 now. As for secondary batteries, major companies reported decent results this quarter, so expectations for Q3 are high. SDI started weak, but saw companies like LNF in the KOSDAQ move first, and then SDI surged by nearly 5% in the afternoon, indicating that secondary batteries are still being viewed positively for trading. Next, regarding security stocks, have you seen the charts for Kiwoom securities lately? They've dropped quite a bit. Please show us.
Let's take a look.
Sure.
Yes. The index itself really struggled back in July.
Right.
It faced quite a bit of pain. Yes, but it seems securities stocks were affected negatively as well.
There's nothing inherently wrong with the houses, but if you look at Kiwoom securities, the chart shows a steady decline. If you look at it weekly, it's clearer. It's been dropping since May and has returned to early this year's levels. So there's a bit of buying pressure coming back, and Q3 results should be good. Mirai Asset Securities also saw a significant drop due to some overshooting related to SpaceX, losing about a third of its value from the peak. It seems likely to recover. FNH and NH Investment and Securities have held up relatively well, and Korea Financial Group reported strong results, but they haven't quite returned to early year levels yet, though they seem to be trying to bounce back. Just looking at today, Kiwoom rose significantly by about 6.8%, indicating they're working hard to change the trend. So that's the outlook on security stocks. Next, regarding power equipment. Looking at power equipment, if I show you Eris Electric, you'll see it has a quicker transition. It has settled above the 21-day line. Today's percentage was a bit low, but Hyosung Heavy Industries is showing signs of a trend reversal, and Samil Electric has risen significantly today.
Right.
Samil Electric had a big drop earlier. Since its market cap is small, it tends to be more volatile. However, on July 23rd, it showed strong movement, and it's now above that level, even though it did drop significantly. There are reports that their performance was good. Their results were solid, and they have the highest operating profit margin. Samil Electric is a special transformer company, so while its scale isn't large, it has been performing better than large cap stocks in terms of operating profit margins. Surprisingly, many people have invested in Samil Electric back when it was doing well. There was a surge related to Bloom Energy, which also saw two big bullish candles. We knew about Bloom in solar energy, but it also got involved with Bloom Energy, causing a significant rise. However, it seems to have fallen more than other stocks since then. Yes. Good.
Please go ahead.
So regarding Samil Electric, EcoPro and EcoPro BM started a bit late, but showed stronger performance than expected. Overall, the KOSDAQ was good today, with positive trends in pharmaceuticals, bio, and secondary batteries. Was robotics bad? No, robotics was good too.
Robotics is doing well.
Yes. Rainbow Robotics rose over 4% today, and pharma research settled above 400,000 won, also showing over 4% growth. Meanwhile, Samchundang Pharmaceutical, which had been lagging behind in bio, is now rising over 14% from its lows.
That's quite a lot.
Yes, so this can be seen as a technical rebound. Overall, the KOSDAQ sectors performed well, while some cosmetic stocks that had been doing well took a breather. Yes, stocks like Cosmeca Korea and Amore Pacific dropped a bit, and Silicon 2 also took a break. On the other hand, APR was very strong today, closing slightly higher. It seems like a rotation is happening. The KOSDAQ rose significantly today because most sectors performed well.
Yes, funds are flowing into ETFs like leveraged ETFs or KOSDAQ 150. While some funds are coming in individually, this is also a trend.
That's right. Institutions have bought over 500 to 600 billion won in KOSDAQ. There's talk that since they can't leverage single stocks, many are opting for KOSDAQ leverage.
Yes, there are movements in ETFs and leverage. The KOSDAQ has dropped significantly, so adjustments are ongoing. You mentioned robotics. Today there's a Unity subscription issue in China, which could actually be a positive for us.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the robotics side.
It's not really competition.
Yes, since it's not competition, there's something to be said. When the representative from Samil Electric spoke earlier, it seemed like the center director had something to
The
add.
reason they experience such volatility and can't give up hope is that, as you mentioned, they deal with renewable energy and special transformers. This includes Bloom Energy, but the biggest volatility comes from the orders they receive. Revenue recognition can happen very quickly, sometimes within 6 months or even a year. But companies like Hyosung or Ereson or S1 Electric are on a much larger scale, so it takes over a year. So what does that mean? When orders are visible, the results are immediately reflected and the market reacts right away. But if orders drop or have already been accounted for, the stock price falls again. That's why there's high volatility. Even though the margins are high, the valuation doesn't increase significantly because of this volatility. But as you mentioned earlier, the recent results were good and orders have increased a lot, up 36% compared to the previous quarter. So what did we say about orders? They come in quickly? Right. And because of that, margins are expected to rise. They're currently in the high 30s but might reach 40%. Analysts generally expect a growth rate of around 30%. If this company stabilizes, its PE ratio should definitely reach 30. But due to the existing volatility, it's currently undervalued. Once orders are confirmed and the quick turnaround is evident, it might not reach 30, but it will go up. Right now, the valuation has dropped to a quite attractive level. For instance, it rose 17% today. There will be volatility, but assuming it stabilizes, the current PE is 18 based on this year. For next year, since it has risen, it's about 20. So in that sense, it moved quickly. If it doesn't move fast, it's different from H2 or Hyundai Electric. H2 didn't rise today. So even if the order backlog builds up, it gets consumed quickly. Exactly. The orders need to consistently pile up and show significant growth.
These orders are mainly for special transformers for data centers.
Including renewable energy as well.
Renewable energy.
Then there are also orders for Bloom Energy's hydrogen fuel cells and for maritime purposes.
Yes, understood. Today, Hanil Electric in the power sector saw a noticeable increase, so we touched on that. I also want to discuss a few sectors, including defense and aerospace, which are in the spotlight.
It's because of SpaceX, right? Yes.
SpaceX is strong. It has an impact on things like this.
Because of SpaceX, stocks like HVM and Sphere have reacted, but shouldn't we sell them today? Oh, really? In the short term, I thought about this. SpaceX might keep rising tomorrow, but with such a big stock up nearly 15%, a correction could happen. So there's a chance it might fluctuate. But rather than that, stocks like Satrec have been rising more steadily. This morning, they climbed even stronger. It seems like they're still adjusting. The defense theme, and even though LIG had a lot of negative comments after their earnings report, it's showing the strongest trend among defense stocks. This is because of high order potential. Yes, that's right. The talk about high order potential is still ongoing. And the US. It's been a long time since says it has no anti-air missiles.
There are various discussions.
The talk is that there's a shortage of those missiles, which is why they can't engage in war. So Middle Eastern countries might rely more on Korea than the US.
There are those issues, and as you mentioned earlier, in space, while SpaceX has its influence, we also have our own issues, like the establishment of the J-Space Center for reusable launch vehicles.
I think that news came out last week. That news seems to be getting some attention now because SpaceX is rising. Because it's rising, that news is also the news is being revived again.
Please take a look at optical communication stocks too. Almost all of them are up today, so there's a lot to watch. Optical communication had dropped a lot, but recently, due to US import restrictions on Chinese goods, it's been rising a bit, and today was good too.
You can think of Seongho Electronics and Daehan Optical Communication as leading the way. I'm not sure if they really benefited from this. Seongho Electronics is said to have some potential, but you'll need to judge that for yourself. This is about optical transceivers, not just optical communication. Regulations. They're planning to regulate, but optical transceivers have been quite cheap for a long time. The key is how to integrate them into data centers, and we need to consider whether our country will really benefit from this technology. Yes. It's important whether NVIDIA will use our products.
This week, Lumentum and Coherent are expected to announce their earnings, so we'll see how that impacts things.
Their earnings will likely be minimal.
Really, they've been doing well lately, so I'll take a look.
For Lumentum, their net profit this year is expected to grow more than NVIDIA's. The increase will be significant. The yield increase is notable. The growth rate will be high. Yes, their growth rate is impressive. If NVIDIA grows by about 40%, Lumentum could see numbers like 60% or 70%. If they meet those expectations, their stock could rise significantly, but whether we can keep up depends on each company. Some experts suggest that if you want to invest in optical communications, just go with American companies like Lumentum. It's more reliable. That's a viewpoint in the market. I agree.
I'd like to hear your opinion.
I share
too.
that view.
Understood. Just for
I
reference.
usually prefer Korean stocks, but sometimes they can be uncertain. In those cases, it might be better to invest in American stocks. Given the nature of the industry, if we look back at the past, when it comes to quantum computers, I always say it's better to stick with the American ones.
Are we directly connected to that industry? Yes, that's right. Or are we just indirectly influenced by the US? It seems like the center director is looking into that. I noticed some materials he organized over the weekend, particularly about stock market checks and strategies.
Yes.
In section 6, I saw that he mentioned the biggest factor affecting memory stock prices is the flow of money. It would be good to highlight that.
It's a sensitive topic, and I feel like if I say too much, I might get in trouble.
But the flow of money really stands out.
Even if it's true, it can be frustrating. If the flow of money changes, it means things will improve. Right now, big tech companies are more stable than memory suppliers. For the past few months, they've been getting memory reliably and using it to leverage their business. When that happens, their profits will soar. It's not happening yet, but big tech is leading the way in the US since June. In Korea, we started feeling that around late June or July. But once everything settles, who will invest in memory? It will eventually come back, but it might take time. Big tech needs stable memory as a component to enhance their leverage. What's the key point? Securing stable memory. But before that, from April to June, the prices were crazy from the big tech perspective, outrageously high. Exactly.
We say we have no choice
Apple.
about the prices, but Apple has pushed back against that. While big tech companies
But honestly, I
didn't push
can't
back
predict the
directly,
speed
they
of that
pressured
rebound.
through
The
LTA
spec
saying
is
they
coming
can't keep
out
raising
now.
prices like that. This shift in power and pressure is happening, and once it stabilizes, we need to ensure a steady supply. If memory stock prices drop too much, even if we consider it a past cycle, if they fall to an unreasonable level, they will eventually rebound.
Lowering the spec?
I apologize for that, but to create 1 terabyte quickly,
그러니까
they need to
1
technically complete
테라바이트인데 빨리
HBM4E
이제 1
and
테라바이트
improve yields.
만들려면
Recently, Samsung Electronics
HBM4E를
mentioned their
기술적으로
yields are
완성하고
improving,
수율이
but
올라오고
there's still some
엊그저께
uncertainty.
삼성전자 수율이
They might be trying
올라왔다
to achieve
얘기
1
많이 하지만
terabyte by
이게 좀
2024,
불안하단
but whether
말이야.
they can actually do
그러니까
it remains to be
얘네들이
seen.
이제 안
These
되는
efforts
것이
reflect a negative
디스페이지 1
sentiment towards
테라바이트
us.
1024 뭐 이렇게 된 것이 3분의 1, 5분의 1 실제 그렇게 했을지 모르지만 일부를 그렇게 트라이하고 실제는 그렇게 안 할지 모르지만 그런 노력을 한다는 거는 사실은 센티먼트는 우리한테 안 좋은 거거든요. They can't produce many GPUs anyway because they don't match up. So from the perspective of companies like NVIDIA making GPUs or Google making TPUs, they have to decide whether to buy high-end HBM at a high price or to lower specs and increase quantity with older products or mid-tier options. I've heard they are really contemplating this. Ultimately, as time goes on, the overall growth of GPUs and memory will align, but framing it as a power struggle makes it seem like we're falling behind in memory. Right now, the flow of money hasn't returned to us yet, so even if the direction is upward, the speed is an issue. Until then, what do? I think we need to wait while also returning value to shareholders and so on. Also, over the weekend, I came across some data. There's a global LLM token spending index, and it seems like they've started calculating it recently. Interestingly, from May to the end of June, when we hit a peak, LLM token costs were at their highest.
When it peaked around 9,000?
Yes, but since then the token costs have been dropping. A decrease in token costs could imply less semiconductor usage, but that's not the case. They're working on efficiency. They've started using more ASIC semiconductors, which has lowered the cost per token. This is linked to the rebound in stock prices for software companies and hyperscalers like Google and Amazon. However, interpretations vary. The semiconductor sector needs a more nuanced understanding. If the cost per token decreases, prices could drop for consumers, leading to more usage. In fact, it could have a positive effect, and having more ASIC semiconductors isn't bad for us at all. So while it may seem like semiconductors are facing short-term challenges, they could be fine in the long run. I found that quite meaningful in a report I reviewed.
Thank you for the introduction. Right now, CEO Lee Kun-hee is referred to as the gift fairy by some. Many people are asking for gifts.
Gifts.
Gifts, futures?
I won't be giving gifts, just futures, only the futures index.
Yes, futures supply.
They bought more again. At the end, it moved like seismic waves today. At the end, they bought this much more. Looking at the daily trends, futures were sold off sharply at one point, but now they're being bought back. But when the index rises, they keep pressing it down. Yes, it seems like they've been selling the spot while realizing profits through futures for 3 consecutive days now. Yes, that's right, for 3 trading days.
This might not be exact, but it gives a bit of direction.
Recently, if you look at the futures chart, it's pretty clear. On a daily chart, it's been all bearish since July 31st. Right. What this means is that when it rises, it gets pushed down again. So for now, that's the case. I watched it all day, and based on the futures, it was down about 1.5% today. Let me show you the minute chart. If you look at the 10-minute chart, it did spike once, but it was mostly stuck in that range, moving between about 4.5 and 5. It kept going up and down around that level. The reason for this is that they don't want to push it down any further right now, just within that range. But let me show you the 60-minute chart for fun. Don't take it too seriously.
Yes.
On July 31st, that was the day with the most selling, but it didn't drop significantly that day. The next day was similar, and they sold a bit more then. But from that point, they started buying again. They bought 3 times at that price level, which means the profits aren't that huge right now. Buying within that range. Yes, exactly. So they don't want to push the index down.
Yes.
They also don't want to push it up. And it seems like they're trying to buy some time continuously. So applying this, don't get too excited and buy in when it spikes early in the session.
Because it will drop again.
It even went up to about 5 today.
The shareholder return policy isn't new, but it worries me. If it goes up because of that, it might drop again. I was thinking that too.
Like we talked about earlier, unless there's something extra on top of the basics, it might just stay small like this.
Right.
So when we talk about shareholder returns, someone mentioned on a show that Kim Jae-jeon always views Korean stocks negatively. I brought up Hynix, and I'm just saying that what I'm talking about with Baekjo isn't anything new. It's not a new topic. I'm saying it's uncertain whether this will push the stock price up by 10% or 20%. But let me mention something else. Speaking of which, do you know how much Micron's stock was when it debuted on May 19th, before our ETF came out? It went up by 25% recently. On May 15th, our stock was down by 16% to 19%. Meanwhile, they went up by 25%. So the semiconductor consulting is not the key issue.
Exactly.
No, they're already up by 25%, while we're down by 16% to 19% just 3 months after May 19th. So when I say this, it sounds right. But the reason is that Samsung and Hynix aren't doing shareholder returns, while Micron is expected to do a lot.
Let me correct that.
It's written that
Micron's
way in the
dividend yield is
report.
low. But I've heard someone say Micron is doing 100% shareholder returns. That's true.
But that's not the case.
그게 아니에요.
So that,
Let me explain.
Acting CEO.
I think I need to mention this. Look, on some FCF-related site, Micron used the term 100%.
That's right.
The excess
Cash.
is way more than what I consider reasonable. So the excess cash is defined by them. It's not a strict calculation.
It's not FCF.
But rather excess cash, which isn't fixed. And they're saying they'll distribute all of it. Naturally, the free cash flow we talk about with Samsung and Hynix after CapEx is lower than that excess cash.
We could do the same.
Exactly. So what is it? The free cash flow is operating cash flow minus capex, and the remaining excess cash is subjective. And I might think future capex will be higher, or I need to reduce debt, or I might need to keep some cash for strategic partnerships. All of that is taken into account. And they're saying they'll distribute all the excess cash, but interpreting this as giving double the free cash flow of Samsung Electronics at 50% is not correct. Yet some people have interpreted it that way. There's some misunderstanding. No, that's not it. It's just that Samsung and Hynix haven't communicated quickly enough, but if they did, it wouldn't be that they're worse than Micron. So I hope it's not seen that way.
Let's wait and see how shareholder returns come out.
We could also suggest doing it 100%. If we communicate like that, we can say we'll give 100% of the excess money.
Let's take a look, just once.
Even if we say it's 120% of the leftover money.
The market talks about things like 100 billion or 200 billion first, right? There seem to be a lot of demands.
If you make a lot of money, yes.
Exactly.
Right.
TSMC in Taiwan just released its monthly sales figures, showing a 45% increase in July, setting a new record for monthly sales. However, Bloomberg's forecast for sales growth was 46.8%, but the actual growth was 44.7%, which is slightly below expectations. Still, it's a record high.
Month over month, it's more than 3%.
So this could indicate that AI demand will continue.
Then NVIDIA's performance will naturally be good.
If you have any insights connecting it to NVIDIA, please share.
That's all we have. Only sales figures are out. The original guidance was around 40%. For Q3 and Q4, that's not extremely low.
We need to consider them
So July
together.
might be lower than what they said, but combining the 7th and 8th gives us over 40%. So it's hard to judge based on that alone. It seems low.
Today, the index rose 7%. Should those who don't have KOSDAQ stocks jump in now, or is it time for KOSPI to strengthen? There seems to be some tension around that. It's a daily
It
dilemma.
really is.
What do you both think? You can split your approach. Should we split
Yes,
it
you
up?
can divide it. You could have split it today, and it would have been good to start splitting on Friday too. If you're considering KOSPI, should we buy 80% KOSDAQ and 20% KOSPI? Starting from tomorrow, that might not be ideal. A balanced approach is necessary. KOSDAQ is down about 30% from its peak.
That's right.
KOSPI isn't much different either. They've aligned now, so if we look at the levels, they've matched up. Putting all your money into one sector carries its own risks.
Understood?
Buy a little when it dips.
What should I buy?
When pressed, KOSDAQ. Pullbacks are good.
We can expect a pullback. If the index rises by 7% today, it could drop by 2 or 3% at any time. So it's important to watch the timing. When investing in sectors or the index, I think it's better to buy in smaller amounts since it could drop to 830 anytime.
If we think about the KOSDAQ's strong performance, we've mentioned that Samsung and Naval need to take a breather, but they aren't completely collapsing. Just like today. Right. If it continues like today, with liquidity flowing and no talk of interest rate hikes. Exactly. That's very important. And government policies are needed too. There are talks about KOSDAQ policies for September.
Talks about September, yes, that's right. They say there will be an announcement in September regarding the
It seems like
standards.
the environment is being set up. Is that why it went up today?
The environment seems favorable for funds to flow into the KOSDAQ, plus leverage has been regulated now.
Yes, it has.
So where will the leverage go? It will likely shift back to KOSDAQ leverage, which was popular before,
Index leverage.
towards 150 leverage.
Heading to Codex 200. Yes, yes.
But if there's one thing to consider, even though it might rise more, in the short term, it could go up a bit.
Short-term adjustments can happen anytime, so there's a lot of volatility.
You need to use your trading skills.
That's right, yes.
We usually say to divide and spread it out, but ultimately, you need trading skills for that too.
Exactly. You need to know when to chase and when not to, but it's a bit hard to explain here. Yes?
Why?
Because it's complicated. Just that alone would take about 2 weeks of lessons.
Uh-huh.
Yes, 3 days a week for about a week. These days, we're offering educational services through subscriptions.
Yes, you're providing
This
that.
week, we're covering buying skills.
Buying skills, exactly what we need to hear. And this week's issue includes CPI and PPI. Last week, we saw some impact from US employment, so we need to watch how inflation comes out this week. Also, there's something else to note. Apple mentioned using new memory for iPhones and MacBooks sold in China. That's something we might not need to worry about.
It's hard to confirm.
Really? They say they will confirm it, but have you verified exactly how they will use it and what angle they took? We're talking about the Wall Street Journal.
Specifically,
That's right.
So there's a discussion happening, but the news from China is separate from the talks between Iran and the US.
It's all
In
separate.
China, they're saying they'll sell something similar, but there are no quality issues, and they claim discussions are ongoing.
Because of that, Changshin Memory's stock jumped by about 20%, or maybe just under that due to the price limit. So we might wonder if the balance has shifted, but as I mentioned earlier, it's a challenging environment, so they might keep trying to provoke us.
Actually, Changshin Memory's stock dropped today by 1%.
Understood. I think that's all we need for today. So we've had a lively discussion in this active market since Monday. Thank you both, Director Kim Jang-reol and CEO Lee Kun-hee. We'll let you go now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.